Hi, welcome to my channel. Um, Today this video clip is a follow-up from the last video clip. So today we will be talking about common sense question that I asked you, which is, what is a privacy breach? And I asked you to name them. I also wanted you to think about what is a privacy breach, and I asked you to write them down in your own interpretation of what is a privacy breach. And the kind of a breach I am talking about are the ones that only relates to you as an individual. Okay, well, these are the ones we'll be talking about today. So first I'll be talking about data breach, and then a fiduciary breach, then a breach of contract, recordings, surveillance, informants, background checks, libel, and stranger danger. Hey, I'm going to do this. Hi, okay. I've actually written down what I'm going to be talking to you in regards to this topic. So I'm actually going to be reading a majority, or all of it really, basically, so I won't miss out any important points, okay? This episode is to define what is a privacy breach. And the kind of breach I'm talking about are the breaches that protects you as an individual. For example, breaches within your personal space, breaches that protects you as an individual according to the law in regards to service from within public service occupations. They call it now public office is what they call it, but the old terminology is public servants. So this breaches that we'll be talking about, the application applies to others, example companies and organisations. For example, the companies and the organisations that you are a client to. For example, banks, telecommunication, etc. Before we go into a definition of each breach that I have chosen to elaborate on today, I want you to know that this topic is based on the laws here in the country that I am at. So you will be collating the specifics around this topic I'm talking about within the laws of your country. Okay, so the first one I'll be talking about is a data breach. A data breach are things like passwords and emails, internet hacking into laptops and computers under your security logons. And then we have proxy. People don't know what a proxy is, but now some companies, since the technology system came in, it was never allowed before, but this is where people behind the scene are actually hacking into your emails, or just observing and watching what you're doing while you're working. That's called a proxy. And the problem with this is that unless you've consented or allowed it, it is still a breach as far as if you're an employee, or just a member of the public. But a proxy is considered as a breach if you haven't consented to it. The problem I have found with proxy is that these people are able to read everything private you write, for example, your emails. So they will get to know, be familiar of how you work, and people actually are using proxy also for unlawful investigation. So unless I'm from another planet, as a direct human being, it's still unlawful because you haven't consented to it. So there are disadvantages to this. The other thing I have found over the years is that they now know your information. They can actually go in there and delete your work, and just if you're being targeted, the disadvantages, you'll end up going through the invisible missing things where things are there and then they're not there anymore. But that's because if those things are happening, it's because people are using the proxy system, and they have other names for it. And so those are the disadvantages I've just mentioned. And they're also able to steal your private information, and they are able to misinterpret it and use it against you without you knowing. So I'll just turn to the next one. The next topic we'll be talking about is a breach of fiduciary duty. Who are these individuals? Well, these individuals are the individuals that you are a client to and hold your personal information, or you've entrusted to confide in or be responsible for your care. For example, doctors, health counsellors, lawyers, registrars, police, basically anyone in government agencies you are a client to. This also includes companies and organisations you have, that you have a profile with, whether, for example, power bills or, stuff like that, or banks, anything that you are a client to, that's your personal profile. Okay, the other one is a breach of contract. So a breach of contract is when a person you've chosen to go to, for example, doctors, lawyers, or if you go to court, the Ministry of Justice, registrars, whoever holds your personal profile, they all have laws to abide to, and they have to actually operate within those laws and within the scope of their occupation. Now, just to give you a bit of understanding, while the registrar, there are different types of registrar, it doesn't mean that they all have the same authority or the same power of right, to do jobs. Everyone's got different job description in each jurisdiction, and I'm just going to use the example of a registrar for the courts, and then the other one is a registrar for a marriage celebrant. Well, common sense is, they're both two completely different job description. So I'll just use that as an example. And that goes for the same as for doctors. Just because somebody's got a law degree or whatever, or a degree around the certain criteria, for doctors and serving the public, it doesn't mean that they all have the same right to serve just anybody. So that's really important. But you can find out all that kind of information on the websites now. Here for the country I'm in, everything's on a website, so you can find out those laws about them yourself if you go on the website. Now, the misuse of technologies. We have recordings. Recording someone's private conversation without their consent is a crime, depending on a circumstance. For example, long term, if it ends up there being a conspiracy purposes, there is a disadvantage for those who are breaking the law in that area. This method is commonly used by corrupt syndicates or professional thieves. And people seem to be using it too for unlawful investigations, hacking into your mobile or phone. Or bugging of home is the other thing. Regardless of what anyone says, if you don't know about it or you haven't consented to it, it is unlawful, and it is, at the end of it all, really, if something goes wrong, it is espionage. Now, call centres, also now is the other thing, they are all basically, everyone's recording everything now, so they're now gone nationally or internationally, most of these call centres, so people everywhere are receiving calls from anywhere in the country. So that's the new system now. So when you ring the company, it automatically goes to a voice message, and then it guides you to a robot, guides you like a robot of what you have to do. They usually let you know that you're being recorded, and it's and that's the system now. The thing is, in the real world of humans, of direct people, who knows their rights and their laws, you have the right to say no, you don't want to be recorded, and then you have to entrust that they're taking that into consideration and not record you. But now they're just recording you, so you have no choice but to do the same thing. There are reasons for that, because you need evidence, if anything, if you're subject to a scam, and you need evidence to take to the police. And you've got to keep in mind that, things like, recordings now, they can be misinterpreted. They can record them and just, cut off bits and pieces and build a case around it to defame you secretly behind the scene. They can divert phones now, and you don't even know really if it is a company you're talking to. It's your word against theirs, and you're actually talking to someone with no name, no face, and you just hear a voice. But that is a call centre system now, and if you are blacklisted, you will, they can mislead you, give you misleading information, and you've got no choice but to do what they're saying. Those that are not pretty experienced know that when they're being lied to or being misled. So that's the massive frustration you have. You can't go any further than that phone call sometimes. But if you keep records and stuff like that, recording, then you can go through the complaints process that the companies have. The other thing I found with call centres, and even the email, when you're sending emails, they're actually sending emails with just the name of the company, no name of the person you talk to. So you're talking to like a computer system, and somebody behind the scene is like, if you're blacklisted, they won't make things easy for you, but they are sending out things like just the name of the company, and but that's still evidence, and you can still use that for your complaints. And unfortunately for the companies, if anything goes wrong, it falls on the company anyway. But that's something they need to look at, because I have found when your privacy is gone, people leave their jobs and then they're actually job jumping. And plus, once after somebody's information's gone, it only takes a text and 24/7 criminal harassment for anything to happen to the person that's targeted. So those are the kind of things you've got to be take into consideration. It may seem harmless, but if you don't know that you're targeted, it could be pretty serious for you in the long run. But it is definitely a sign that you are being blacklisted, and you are being subject to a scam where everything just hits a brick wall. But you need to, all you can do really is just take a recording and just keep making police reports. And when you do make police legal reports, make sure you get a name of the people you're talking to. That's the same on the phone. When you make phone calls on the phone call, get a name of the person, and they're actually supposed to have a client name, number. I don't know, each one's different, but they usually just only give you a first name, and all you hear is a voice. So you need to get as much information of that person, write down the time, the date, and all those phone calls can be tracked if there's a proper investigation into everything. And take recordings, because if you're targeted, they lie to you, and yeah, you can be reassured you'll get nowhere, and it's very stressful and very discouraging. But all you can do is take down evidence of what you're doing. So I suggest you actually record everything if you're in that situation. And that goes with the emails. I have had issues where I've come across where people have given me wrong information. I've looked up the law and the in the legislation, and they've actually like doing their own thing. So those are the things the public has to be aware of. The other thing is secret surveillance. Secret surveillance is like there's cameras everywhere now. So it's very easy, for people to secretly keep you under surveillance without any legal warrant or right to do it. And that's what's been happening with me. I know that they can easily record you within your home. They know your financial set of circumstances, so you could go through a downhill spiral. But if you've kept a historical evidence of your trace of what you've been doing, it's very, very easy to undo. So secret surveillance, legally by law, it is illegal to investigate someone without a legal warrant, and usually a legal warrant is only required if that person has been subject to some kind of suspicious crime, but then they need proper evidence or something to give them to allow them to initiate an investigation. But then in saying that, a warrant has to be signed by a judge, and then they actually have to come knocking on your door, and that's the only time they're allowed on your premises. But what's happened to me has been done quite opposite, where people have illegally done everything quite the opposite to a direct way of living. Then you end up living a life of being invisible and treated invisible. But a legal warrant should be signed by a judge or a registrar of the courts, and they have a process to follow, because if that's been misused too, they could get into trouble for that. But in my case, what's been happening to me all of it has been happening without my consent. So at the end of the day, I'm still entitled to proper legal intervention, or allow my case to be heard in a public court. But we'll get to that later on. Okay. The other one I wanted to talk about was informants. People don't know what an informant is. Informants are people who basically, really black and white, these people are being spies or being, actually treason is the word. They're actually being spy for whoever is using them. These people are like being the eyes and the ears of whoever has sent them. The unfortunate thing is that these people don't have any legal right at all, unless unless they've got some kind of legal right, but they don't. It can backfire on them if they've done their own thing. So the problem is that if they're using your family and your friends, that's just causing division in your home, of course, but it is dangerous and it is breaking the law. But that's a common thing these people seem to be doing for unlawful investigation, are informants. And then they got their spies and their contacts, and then you end up having all these people texting each other, and they're in your path wherever you're going. But if this is happening without your consent, that is considered as criminal harassment, and it's actually 2 years imprisonment if the people, if it's been found out that these people are doing what they're doing. It is illegal, and then but you can get a protection order and stuff like that, as I was speaking about them quite a few times when I was on Facebook. but it is considered as criminal activities, and it is a serious crime if it's been investigated properly. Why? Because you can become, why it's serious is because you can become an accessory to a crime, whether it's after the fact or before. These people have no legal rights to do what they're doing, so it is automatically criminal. And a combination of individuals texting each other is another form of cyberbullying or a gang. The use of substitute is also a breach or a class as a fraud because they are stealing another person's or another individual's identity, and reality is in the criminal jurisdiction, it's received by deception, whatever it is they're after you for or using you for. And at the end of the day, reality is it is espionage, and it is the cause of invasion of privacy in your private space. If you feel alienated, eventually one day you just wake up and like, hey, what happened here? But it is very likely you've been subject to a downhill spiral where people are in your space in advance without you knowing. But there are people that actually act suspiciously. There's nothing magical about them. They are just people being eyes and ears for people who are breaking the law or initiating it. The other one is background checks. Background checks, a consent form is required for background checks, and without a consent form, it is illegal or unlawful. And an investigation on someone's background in this country is against the law without that form. And I have found a lot of agencies have asked for that when I was doing job search and stuff like that. But by law, they're not actually allowed to have that information until you actually have a one-on-one consultation, and they're also asking in advance the name of your referees. Well, the problem with that is that if you're being blacklisted, you automatically disadvantage yourself if you give that information, because what they're actually doing once your privacy's gone and they've studied you and recorded you is they're actually undermining you and luring everybody good in your life away from you. Then you end up isolated. And yeah, it's not good. But these are the kind of things that you got to look out for. So you shouldn't be giving anything original to anybody you don't know or have seen face to face. So agencies for the laws here, it's actually HR that, that kind of information is not really released until that form is signed, and not until after you've actually had a one-on-one consultation with, like a job interview. And that is when, that's guarantee to you that these people aren't fraudulent. I mean, just if you're going to just give over that kind of information and send an email, that information to someone you've never known, you're just, setting yourself up, and it is dangerous. So yeah, I suggest don't release anything like that when you do your CV. Be minimal about what you put on there. Just describe your job description or your skills and all the rest of it. Anything else you don't have to answer everything that they ask you. If you prefer to be asked on a one-on-one interview, then that's what you should do, because you don't know, you haven't seen these people, you don't know who you're sending your email to or your personal information. So those are the kind of things that you need to take in consideration. It's actually pretty serious stuff that the public has to put up with this system, it's really discriminating. It's quite serious. The other thing is libel. Libel is anything defamatory. This is when somebody is orally or written or damaging your reputation through misinterpretation. And that's what I've found, what's happened to me. I found that people have actually, unlawfully misinterpreted my circumstance in their own words or taken everything out of its context. So no one is allowed to do any investigation or access your personal profile. This is what we're talking about, is your personal profile, without your consent legally. The information in your personal profile has to be 100% accurate, as these records are permanent records of your existence. Some people can't read, others don't have an understanding because there's a language barrier. If you can afford it, I suggest you get a power of attorney. But you have to make sure it's someone you know or trust 100%, because people change all the time and you could be worse off. But those are the options that you have for legal stuff if you need help. But personally, if you can read and write and stuff, I suggest you do it yourself. The other thing is a stranger danger. That's nothing new. A lot of it's common sense. What stranger danger is people that behave or act suspiciously within your space, that shouldn't be there but are there. And normally it comes from people, stalking you, or it's called criminal harassment, which is actually 2 years imprisonment if those people are caught. But stranger danger, you teach your children about them. Don't talk to strangers. Well, the same thing is happening. It's easily done now with adults. They are just only texting each other. And if they've stolen your identity, or you've known in your history things have happened, back in when you knew things were happening to you, couldn't do anything about it, it's very likely there's a reason why someone is following you. Other things are like the media, or but these people are using your family and are still breaking the law. And some things you don't have a choice, because that's humanity, but still you can do what you can do to protect yourself. If you feel that these things are happening to you. The problem is that if you do ignore it, you'll be worse off with nothing to back you up legally if you don't do anything about it as they happen. But the moral of it all really is that when your privacy is gone completely, like it has been for me, they can easily premeditate or organise your circumstances easy without you knowing. You could easily be lured or walk into a trap or be set up easy. That's why you need to take these kind of things quite seriously, and we're all responsible for ourselves at the end of the day. But all they're doing, they are just only texting each other easy. Yes, they are even using your children. If you're a threat to somebody, the opposition can be anyone that finds you a threat or competition. Sometimes it's companies against companies. It's not a very good set of circumstances to be in, but people can be targeted for anything really, and now it's just really easy to do. Okay, so I hope you found that information informative. I've only basically just touched on the important key the key elements of what kind of things you need to be aware of or take responsible for yourself to protect yourself. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll talk to you soon.